Good morning and welcome in. This is 5 Clubs on Golf Channel.
You are a vital part of our game.
Thank you for having me on.
All the way to the green. Woo! Boy, was that fun.
I've always wanted to be on 5 Clubs. Thanks, Gary.
Good morning. Welcome into 5 Clubs. Great to have you with us on this Tuesday here on Golf Channel. Also, you can listen as well. That is PGA TOUR Radio, Channel 92 on Sirius XM. I'm Gary Williams. In this program, presented by Century Insurance, they do business insurance. Evaluate yours with them. And we are proud to be aligned with them because they're invested in golf in great ways with the USGA, with the First Tee, with the PGA Tour. At every level, Century Insurance says golf is good for us, and they'd be good for your business insurance. They are our presenting sponsor. We've got a big Tuesday and back after the one-day hiatus because of the winter weather. And yes, for all the people out there who suggested or just simply called us soft, guilty. We are not equipped down here in the hinterlands of Charlotte, North Carolina for a little ice and slush and snow. But most importantly, we know that a lot of areas really got socked in up in the Northeast, and they're far more equipped. I was on some calls yesterday, including with some people up in the Boston area, and they're like, really, you're home? 18 inches, and he's just plowing right into work there. But hope everybody made it through safe. I know that Nashville got hit very, very hard, but we are happy to be back, to get back after it, and we are excited to welcome a new contributor to 5 Clubs today. This is somebody who was a member of 4 Solheim Cup teams, was on the Curtis Cup, won on the LPGA, won 6 times on the LET, and now is a main voice when it comes to covering the biggest events in women's golf. She's part of the Live From team, along with Brandel Chambly, who does some of the Live Froms for the women's majors. That is Mel Reid. We are excited. I know she does great podcasts, Quiet Please, with Kira K. Dixon, but she is going to be contributing with us throughout the year. Her maiden voyage a little bit later on this morning. And before Mel, Sean Zak, who is a regular guest on this program throughout 2025 from Golf Magazine, golf.com. He too part of a podcast as well, The Drop Zone, with all of his peers at Golf Magazine. Looking forward to getting his thoughts on a myriad of subject matter. And he also did a very lengthy profile on Tommy Fleetwood. Went over to Dubai at the end of the year, spent time with him. And it's a very good read. And there's nothing particularly surprising about it, but some very interesting nuggets that are illuminating about kind of his state of mind now, being where he is as the third-ranked player in the world. But because we were not here yesterday and didn't have the opportunity to unpack number 20 for Scottie Scheffler, we're going to do that here for a couple minutes before Sean Zak joins me, and I'll get his thoughts as well. Because, look, we've talked about this pretty consistently because we don't think it's going to end. This is not a heater. This is not a flyer. This is the Scheffler era. And how long an era lasts in men's professional golf, I think is a little bit more condensed now than maybe what it used to be. But even major championship eras, for many of the best major championship winners of all time, with the exception of Gary Player and Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods, who's, for Gary Player, his first was 59, his last was 78. Jack, his first was 62, his last was 86. For Tiger, his first was 97, his last was 2019. Most everybody else, it's like a 5 to 7 year window. Get what you can get. But the overall production level and the expediency, considering that Scottie Scheffler was already a professional golfer and made his way onto the PGA Tour, not immediately. He did time on the Korn Ferry Tour and was the best player, was fully exempt, and then he turns around. He's on the PGA Tour, and after that Ryder Cup appearance in 2021, before he had won on the PGA Tour, he starts the meter of winning in 2022, and from then until now, we're now at 20. His next win will be blackjack, okay? And then you add the 4 majors, which before the age of 30, here comes that small table. How'd you like to be at that high top? Are you joking? 20 wins, 4 majors before 30. And that win total and that major championship total can be increased before he turns 30 at the U.S. Open in June. The Masters, which a lot of people are already making him the betting favorite. I get it. I mean, he's a betting favorite when he's 5 back with like 12 holes to go on the PGA Tour. Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods, now Scottie Scheffler, 20-4 before 30. That is a very illustrious high top table. And considering that Jack won his first major in '62, that was his first professional win. Tiger won immediately in Las Vegas in the fall of '96, then won at Disney, and then all of a sudden 1997, and it is more than hello world. It's get out of the way. For Scheffler, it was more methodical, but he's made up for lost time. So for him to get to that space is amazing. But even if you consider that his meter of winning took a little bit longer to get going, then we get to the next thing, which is how many total starts on the PGA Tour to get to 20? The 95 is just pure lunacy. The Tiger won 20 times in his first 95 starts, which just totally made the hello world thing just, I mean, it was already good. It just was like, come on, man. He's over-delivering on hello world. Jack hit 127. Now Scottie Scheffler slides in between Jack and Arnie. Scottie Scheffler on Sunday slid in to that high top table between Jack and Arnie at 151, and for Arnold Palmer it was 178. Fastest, and look, I'm not in any way taking a side swipe to the early 60s, and for Arnold Palmer, the mid to late 50s. But everyone would agree that the density of the capable players who could actually win an event on the PGA Tour is far more plentiful now than it was then. And here he is in that company as well. And then if you consider the more recent part of it all, like getting to 20, because how fast he's gotten to 20, because he had essentially half of his professional starts on the PGA Tour were absent of a win. And now you start looking at since he started winning at the Waste Management WM Phoenix Open and what he's done over the last 4+ years. And if you start looking at, you know, the winningest players on the PGA Tour over the last several years, and obviously Scottie Scheffler is number 1 with 20. That's twice what Rory McIlroy has. Twice what the second best player in the world has. And oh, by the way, you're going, okay, that's a bad graphic. You have Scottie on there twice. No, just less than half of his wins on the deepest tour in the world, where it's hard to separate. Almost half the time in his wins, he's separating by 4 or more, including at the American Express, where you have to get to 25 or 27 or 28 or maybe even 30 under to win, and you don't win by that margin. And he did. No, by the way, he made a double on the 71st hole, and there's Andy Schauffele. Before he got injured, you know, you could argue, you know, he's easily, I think, and comfortably say he was the 3rd best player in the world to start 2025. I mean, this is not a flyer. We are now living in a period where this guy is just piling up stuff that is historic because of the company that he's now keeping, and also the margins by which he's separating himself from the best players in the world. Twice as many wins as the 2nd best player in the world. By the way, the 2nd best player in the world, the margin in the world rankings, and again, disclaimer, we get it. It doesn't account for the LIV players. Okay, disclaimer issued. His margin between himself and Rory is the same gap between Rory and the player who is currently 677th in the world. That is the type of stuff, that's the type of anecdotal stuff that we used to talk about with Tiger and two, and whoever was out, way out on, you know, the horizon at 600, 700, 800 in the world. So Scottie Scheffler's overall profile, or in terms of, what he's done, his dominance, 14 wins in his last 35 starts, 14 of 35. If you're 14 of 35 with 6 threes in an NBA game, particularly an NBA playoff game, that's legendary stuff. 40%. He now has 16 consecutive top 10s. You could even pare that down. It's 16 consecutive top 8s, most on the PGA Tour since 1983, and his last finish outside the top 10 was an atrocious top 20, tied for 20th at the Players in March. My gosh, we should have crisis counseling right after the Players for fans and media because, my God, how could he finish 20th? And with that win, he's now at $100 million, and now he's looking right at Phil, and then Rory, and then Tiger. They're not that far off, and it's not unreasonable that he could be the number one in total earnings all time. And I get it that the proliferation of cash in the game over the last couple of years has made it skewed. It's been kind of going in this direction, but obviously the acceleration of the last couple of years is wild. And then the last thing is something that we provided with you all last Wednesday. And again, this is just condensing the biological snapshot of Tiger between the ages of 26 and 29. And a couple of things just simply to add. This also included the transition from Butch to Hank Haney for Tiger. So there was a little mini kind of dry spell. I mean that modestly. And yes, he had 29 wins before he turned 26. So we get that. But and by the way, Scottie Scheffler has 5 more months at the age of 29. Do we think that the win total is going to stay at 20? No, I don't think so. So he now, in terms of top 5s, more, again, he does have more starts, more top 10s, but now he's got 3 more wins during that window, and then it's likely to go to more than that. And that gets us to just where again, and again, I think this is kind of the open-ended question. Where are we going? And I was listening to the No Laying Up guys yesterday, and look, I get it, the recency bias and what happens, and we all get wrapped up. But I'm listening to those guys, and Toronto, I believe, said 6, and it was 6, 7, and 8. I think Solly said 8. 6, 7, and 8 for this season. And I'm listening to that, and I want to say, would you guys slow down? And I'm thinking to myself, no, don't slow down. Don't hit a speed bump. Don't get off the off-ramp at 5. Keep going. And as we go to break, I've called him the shadow. I've called him inevitable. I mentioned this as a term for him at the end of the year when we had Brendan Porath and Andy Johnson on the program. He's the toll booth collector. Now, they don't really exist anymore. And by the way, what a thankless job that was when they actually did sit in those booths and take your cash and give you a ticket. He's the toll booth collector because at the end of the turnpike, when you get on at the beginning and you're going, hey, this is great. There's no tolls between when I get on and when I get off at exit 1 on the Garden State Parkway. Oh, when you do get off at exit 1, you pay that toll booth collector for all of the exits you bypass, which essentially are like rounds of golf on the PGA Tour. He's the guy who gets paid. Inevitably, he's the toll booth collector. And I've got one last acronym for him. He is AD. He's AD because nobody is more equipped to accept, adjust, and then deliver. Doesn't matter what the agronomics are. Doesn't matter what the scoring resistance is. It could be 3 under, it could be 30 under. Well, this isn't a good setup for him. Really? Are you going to play that card? I mean, it's remarkable. He accepts what he's been presented, he adjusts to all of it, and then he delivers at the end. 20-20. By the way, he just left behind Ernie Els and Tom Kite and Ben Crenshaw and Hubert Green and Doug Ford and Bill Melhorn for 19 wins. I mean, Ernie Els, 19-4. Bye. And he's 29. All right, we take a break here when we continue. Sean, Zach, Did a great profile on Tommy Fleetwood. You can read now at golf.com. Went over to Dubai at the end of the year. A lot to get to with him, including his perspective on Scottie. What is the most interesting and compelling aspect of the Scottie run or era that we find ourselves in? And a little bit later on, new contributor to 5 Clubs. We're thrilled to have her voice to make us smarter, make us better, make us think. Mel Reid, who's now a big part of Live From on Golf Channel for all the big events for women's golf. And of course, the LPGA, they start their season this week. Take a break. Sean, Zach on the other side. We are live on Golf Channel and PGA Tour Radio's Sirius XM Channel 92. We're back on 5 Clubs right after this. Back in this Tuesday edition of 5 Clubs here on Golf Channel and PGA Tour Radio, Sirius XM, Channel 92. This segment brought to you by Peter Millar. This Callum Cable crewneck sweater. What an item for a day like today. Not to mention this little cashmere sports shirt that I've got underneath it. I mean, come on. The guys are like, only 2 layers. I'm like, you can be efficient when you're talking about a cable crewneck sweater and a cashmere sports shirt. Come on. Only at Peter Millar and petermillar.com. I'm a little disappointed in Sean Zak, who joins me now from Golf Magazine, golf.com. He's got his podcast with all of his crew at Golf Magazine, The Drop Zone. Only 1 quarter zip today. He's looking out over Lake Michigan. It's not moving. You know what that means. My friend, good morning. How you feeling?
We're inside, so it's warm. We're feeling good, and it's good to hear your voice early in the golf season.
Thank you. It's good to have you back. I look forward to a lot of conversations. You added a lot of value to our perspective on a lot of things last year. Look forward to doing it again this year. And you wrote this piece about Tommy Fleetwood. You went to him, and going to him ain't around the corner. And I'm curious about it. We're going to get to all of that. But I want to start with Scheffler, because you're not a hysterical person. You're not, you don't just make hot takes left, right, and center. Occasionally we all like to, peel one off. It feels good, and then you're going, why did I do that? But where are we? What is the most compelling, interesting aspect of what he's doing?
Well, I feel like you used a lot of the most compelling stuff in the beginning of your show, but you can really look anywhere and find something that is newly compelling. I will say, Gary, I imagine in the next month, you'll probably have a couple bad days. You'll maybe have 2 or 3 days that just don't go great. Maybe you stumble on a question or there. It's not a great Gary Williams day. The thing is, Scottie Scheffler does not have bad days. Like in the last 2 years, he has had 12 rounds, probably out of maybe 100, 115, 12 rounds that have been below the PGA Tour average. 12 days. So essentially, one every other month of his pro golf dips below the average that Rory, Xander, JT, Spieth, all those guys set the average. He's barely ever beneath that. And it's just such a high floor that he doesn't have bad days. I mean, that includes the day that he went to jail for a few hours. Like, he doesn't have bad days. It is just such an inevitability that is, it's so hard to work against if you're an average PGA Tour player.
Yeah, I think that, look, we're not saying inevitable like every week, but in golf, when you start busheling, these wins in back-to-back years, and now you're in 20 in this condensed time, that's as inevitable a feeling that anybody who covers golf, loves golf, watches golf, that you would apply that term. Tiger took it to a different level. The other thing you said about bad days is interesting because, look, I think, like Roger Federer, from the middle of 2004 to the middle of 2010, his worst result in a Grand Slam was a semifinal appearance. Worst. So that presents a shadow, this presence that is there. So let me get to this with Scottie as it applies to what effect he has on everybody else. Distraction, awareness of him. Do you think that dynamic is present now on the PGA Tour?
No one will want to admit it to you, but it has to be. I will give Ben Griffin credit. Last year, when he kind of went toe-to-toe with Scottie, he acknowledged his 54-hole lead only means so much because that guy is near him on the leaderboard. I give Ben a lot of credit for saying that because these individuals at the top of this sport are conditioned to believe that their best is the best. Their best cannot be beat by anybody. And I just think that that's not necessarily true if Scottie Scheffler is in the golf tournament, if he has made it to the weekend, which he makes every single week. So I think it's true. I think you'll have a hard time getting people to admit it, but it is so dominant and it is so present and so inevitable. And it's happened so many times that maybe they will start to admit it. You know, Xander Schauffele did a lot of good when he had his great breakout season in 2024, saying that Scottie's atop the mountain. And Xander's trying to use his ice pick to get higher and higher up that mountain. And he was doing so. But then both of them got hurt. One of them came back from injury really well. That's Scottie Scheffler. And then Xander came back less well. And so everyone is trying to climb the mountain. And so, yeah, maybe that's the idea that we're trying to piece together. You call him the shadow. Maybe it's this mountain that is casting a shadow. That's how we're talking about the guy right now.
Yeah, and you're right about the weekend part. Like, when he finds himself on a cut line, that'll be compelling. Because no, he's not broaching Tiger's 144, but 64 is a big number, and you know, like you said, he doesn't have bad days. There's an inevitability to a bad day, and then that Friday becomes a compelling storyline whenever that presents itself. All right, let me get to Fleetwood, but before him, specifically Dubai. So you go to Dubai at the end of the year, and I think, look, we're all inclined because wherever you live, there's a myopic kind of viewpoint that we have of the world, whether it's, you know, kind of culture, food, everything, and that includes, like, we have it better than this. What was your impression of the presentation of a big-time event on the DP World Tour?
I think it's just as good as a big-time event on the PGA Tour. I don't think that tour necessarily has anything that can compare to the Players' Championship, but that's like cream of the crop, right? I think they have a number of events in Europe, across Europe, and the Middle East now in Dubai that are just as great as the signature events in the States. And that goes without, you know, sharing attendance details, but we've seen what Rory McIlroy in contention at the Irish Open looks like. That's as good as any signature event here in the States. And so I loved Dubai. You know, it's a great place to visit. It's probably not going there and living for a month, but there's a reason why a lot of people are starting to kind of call it the Florida for Europeans, because there's a lot of European golfers who are choosing it as their home base. I asked Tommy Fleetwood, do you think this will become more of a destination? Yeah, you're playing golf in a dome, Tommy told me, because the weather there does not change. It's like San Diego's climate, as close as possible to Europe as you can get, and it's predictable, and pro golfers love predictable weather.
So when you spend time with Tommy Fleetwood to construct this feature that is now available for you to read at golf.com for Golf Magazine, you know how affable he is, you know how likable he is. Why do you think that he has such affection afforded to him across the spectrum?
I really think it boils down to the fact that he is comfortable speaking. It's one of the most human things to do, is to communicate with people that want to communicate with you. That includes acknowledging people, obviously, at a golf tournament. When people shout at him about the Everton Football Club, he acknowledges them. That's simple stuff. But the hardest stuff is going and speaking to idiots like me who have questions for Tommy after a tournament. And we saw in 2025 him go through some of the hardest moments of his pro golf career, losing tournaments. You could say that he was choking away tournaments. I think I'm comfortable making that assertion right in the last final few holes. And every single time he turned away from the 18th green, shook his hand with his caddy, and he went right to scoring, and he talked to the media. Now, he did that for himself. He's doing it for all of us. He's looking at the red light camera, and he is saying what he wants to hear. That is a cheat code for him. it helped him get through and move forward when you want to leave golf forever. And he explained that was like a healing process for him, was speaking. That gets streamed out to the entire world. So people know what it's like to be Tommy Fleetwood. People know the human element of that, which is relatable, which is letdown and emotion. That's why he connects with so many of us, is because he was showing how human he can be. That's what we look for. And, like, to end this point, like, Tiger Woods really didn't give us that. So if today's stars can give us more of that, I think they'll be more liked.
Yeah, and of course, Tiger didn't have a lot of opportunity to talk about heartbreak. And that's very humanizing. And obviously, you wrote about this in the piece about Rotella, that's right out of the book. And you hear some of those similar things from Rory in terms of, audibilize it. That's part of the therapy of getting past the result and not looking at it as pass-fail, but just merely as an outcome. I want you to listen to this thing that Rory had to say last night about Brooks Koepka coming back. And he's going to obviously be at the Farmers. ESPN's added hours of coverage to this, specifically because Brooks's return to the PGA Tour. Here's what Rory had to say, then I'll ask you a question on the other side.
I think it says more about Brooks than anything else. He obviously is a very competitive person and wants to compete at the highest level. And, I think he made the decision that he thought competing at the highest level meant coming back to the PGA Tour. So you've seen others say this recently. Patrick Reed said it in Dubai last week. It seems like, some of those guys are maybe starting to realize that they're not getting everything that they wanted out of going over there. And that's obviously a great thing for the PGA Tour.
Does the PGA Tour need great results from Brooks Koepka?
It would be nice for the tour if he came back and played well, because it would feel like he is the asset that we all kind of think he is. Like, his 5 majors are one thing, his presence, his name, and what we believe him to be. He hasn't really been that golfer for the last 2 seasons. And so for him to show up and bring some of what we believe Brooks Koepka to be, that is at some level important to the PGA Tour. But the thing is, he's promised to do that 15 times this year. So whether it happens this week or next week in Phoenix, like, Brooks Koepka is going to play well at some point, because, inevitably he was winning like one live golf tournament each year. So he'll have his peaks, and the tour is going to seize upon that. Now, like, he may be the only one who comes back from live. And the tour is going to make the most of it, right? Like, their streaming partner, ESPN, is making the most of it. So, what's been funny about live golf versus PGA Tour over the last, 4 years of our lives is it has been tug of war. It has been like, okay, they steal these guys. Yeah, but the best players are over here. Yeah, but we got this great event in Australia. Yeah, but we have the Players' Championship and you don't have the Players' Championship. And so this feels like a big tug on the tug of war rope. And, it might take a little while for live golf to tug back.
The schedule. Here is a thought from Rory last night about the potential condensing of the schedule. Then I'll ask you a question about how it relates to him, not only immediately, but for the balance of where he's going. Here's Rory last night.
Obviously, I think we've all heard, starting maybe after the Super Bowl and then going through to the end of August before the football season starts again. That seems very condensed to me, but seems like a lot of golf in a pretty short period of time, depending on how many events that they want to play. But that does open up opportunity for the other 5 months of the year around the world. I'm a DP World Tour member, a very proud one, and I think that opens an opportunity up for them to showcase some of their biggest events in that time of the year.
I think that there's a perception that Rory can drift at times. It's just simply not true. He doesn't live inside the top 8 like Scheffler does. But I'm curious for you, as he goes forward, what are the things that he has to do to chip away to, you were talking about Xander ascending, the historical mountaintop. He finds himself in rare company with the career Grand Slam. What are the things that you think in terms of going from, in people's mind, from 15 to 12 to 10 potentially, or 8 all time? What are those benchmarks?
I really think it comes down to individual moments. And frankly, he's starting to speak these moments into existence. Like Rory's won a U.S. Open, but he won a U.S. Open at a rain-soaked Congressional. Yep. He's completely aware of that. And he wants to, it's not a wrong, but he almost wants to right that half wrong in his mind, because he thinks U.S. Open, he thinks Shinnecock, like this summer, will be baked out, firm and just fast as hell. Like, if you can win there, that's a moment. If you can take down Scottie Scheffler at Aronimink at the PGA Championship, if you can take down a big player in a big moment, if you can go back-to-back at the Masters and have this be his Masters era, I think he's in pursuit of those moments. And, you know, he's kind of been doing a little bit of that. He won at Pebble last year. He won at the Players on a Monday last year against JJ Spawn. Like, he's had moments. Now he just has to like do a couple of those every single year, and he'll really cement himself as a top 10 player of all time.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on all that, and in particular the U.S. Open. If Shinnecock is crusty and bakey and fiery, and he crosses the line there, nothing will touch the Masters and the Slam. But you're right about from the pin cushion that was Congressional to him building a resume at a U.S. Open after missing the cut at Shinnecock in 18 incrementally to become one of the best U.S. Open players, even though he's a U.S. Open winner. I'm with you on that. That would be a huge pelt for him. All right, we gotta end it here. So much more I could have gotten to. We will do it again soon enough. Thank you as always.
You got it, Gary.
All right, there is Sean Zak. Great piece at golf.com, Golf Magazine on Tommy Fleetwood. We come back. Mel Reid, who's becoming a very important voice now that her playing career is completed, and a new contributor here to 5 Clubs. She joins us next. It is great to see that, because we are very thrilled that we're going to be joined in just a moment by the newest contributor to 5 Clubs, somebody who had a wonderful playing career and is now transitioned quite smoothly to talking about the game. And this segment is brought to you by Century Insurance. They want to be right by you when it comes to your business insurance needs. And certainly we count on them for all their support, and they invest in golf in great ways at every single level. Century Insurance, 4 times on the Solheim Cup team, represented as well on the Curtis Cup, 1 on the LPGA, handful of wins on the LET, and now a big part of covering the game, the biggest events in women's golf, and anybody who can spend hours with Brandel Chambly and not smack him around, even though I think occasionally she may be inclined to do so. Mel Reid, she joins me now. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Good morning. Yeah, we just moved to Colorado, so it's definitely, the climate is definitely different than what it was in Florida, but we're happy. And yeah, thanks for having me on. Well,
thank you for indulging us to be able to lend your voice throughout the year. We want to give people the smartest voices, and you are certainly among them. I did not mention when I was giving you the introduction, you also have your own platform as well with Kira Dixon, Quiet Please, your podcast, which you guys leave the road occasionally, which makes it even more fun. That's, I think, the most delightful part of that program. But let me ask you, as somebody who, you make this commitment, this pursuit to do what you did, and you got there, and then you experience what every athlete experiences, the mortality of it ending, and then you transition to doing this. What was your view of the way the game was covered when you were playing? And has it changed at all now that you are covering the game?
For sure. I think that we've always, as players, spoke very, very clearly that we would like more TV coverage. I've seen the most incredible shots from, Laura Davies, Carlotta Saganda out of the trees, Lydia Ko getting up and down from the most ridiculous spot. And that's never been shown on TV. And so now I feel like being this side of it, it's hard to tell a story unless, I would say, technology is involved. We are now getting some tournaments which have technology like Shot Tracer, and it's a lot easier for us now or for me, I've understood as a broadcaster to kind of tell that story of a player. Instead, we have to almost like the tournaments that we don't have that technology, we almost have to watch the TV and watch shot by shot, but there's not that many shots. It kind of just shows the leader and the odd player here and there. So, it's not just from visibility of the player, but it's also for their brand as well. And it's difficult for us as announcers. So, as an announcer now, I really appreciate a very, very good team around you.
Sean Zak, who you worked out with once and you were laughing as he was explaining to me during the break, one time, didn't go well for him. He was talking about the tug of war between the PGA Tour and LIV. I want to apply that to the tug of war between doubt and belief. Look, it's something players who pursue any sport have to deal with. And when you're living in a place of belief, you never think you're going to never have any doubt again. And when you have doubt, you never think you're going to believe again. How about transitioning from that dynamic to belief and doubt as it applies to sharing thought and expressing yourself and analyzing what you did and others are now doing it? Have you experienced any of that?
Oh, there's a lot of similarities. I think the thing is, when you're a professional athlete, everyone can see not only when you do well, but they can see when you mess up. So it's a lot of vulnerability there. And I feel, at least in what I'm doing now, you can kind of prep in a more predictable way, whereas golf can just throw anything at you. But look, I think playing professionally for, 18 years or so has tremendously helped my transition. I obviously still have doubts in what I'm doing now, and I'm kind of learning along the way. But I certainly think that golf has equipped me to handle that a lot better than if I hadn't played, I think. It's still the same tools. You need good prep, good self-talk, just being kind to yourself. And I think with me as well, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm still kind of learning along the way and training along the way and evaluating kind of each time I do a live broadcast or I'm in the studio. It's the same as eyes as well. Like, I still want to be one of the best at doing this, but also being authentic and kind of bringing out my personality in that as well.
Mel, you mentioned technology, and Craig Kessler, one of his first initiatives was the product. The product's got to get better. And it's not just, scoring average, it's how it's presented. So with all these enhancements that are going to be added starting this week, certainly you will see some of it. Everything's going to be live. And technology costs money, and that investment is being made. What do you think is going to prove to be the most valuable enhancement that is going to be added to the LPGA product that could gain traction with either a curious audience or a new audience?
Well, first of all, I think having everything live, every single round live on the LPGA this year that Craig has managed to do in such a short space of time as well, by the way, is a massive step forward.
Yep.
It creates stories. We need to get more engagement from fans, number one. I also think that Chad Coleman, we've just hired him as a CMO. He did amazing things at Callaway. Like, he thinks outside the box. He's just like a brand builder. And that hire happened, actually. I had so many people reach out, like, what a great hire. So Craig Kessler's doing great things. And look, we have a great product. We've always had a fantastic product. But things do have to change. We're not the PGA Tour. So we kind of want to ask ourselves, like, what can we do different? What will make going to an LPGA event a different experience from any other kind of sporting event? We just need to get fans to watch, getting players to be invested as well. And I think that has also been a huge challenge, is getting the players on board the last few years. Whereas I think with Craig coming in, I can already see a shift in the players, that they're getting invested. So now the players are getting invested. I really feel like, we can kind of push boundaries a little bit. And I do think that some really big changes are going to happen in a very, very, very positive way.
Yeah, the global structure of the tour schedule has always been interesting to me. When you ask, particularly the commissioner, about it, for you as a player, what's the best thing about the globalization of the schedule, and what's the biggest challenge?
Well, first of all, I just think it takes a toll on us. We go to Asia at the start of the year, and we go to Asia again at the end of the year. So it just takes a toll from a travel point of view. Our travel schedule is kind of all over the place as well. I think that's one of the things that Craig is kind of trying to conduce that a little bit. So it's a little bit easier on the players. But I've always said that it's incredible that we are such a global tour, but it also comes with some challenges, right? Like, Americans want to root for Americans, and the majority of our events are in America. So even for me, like when I watch the PGA Tour, I still want Rory, Tommy, Justin Rose to win, just because I'm European.
Sure.
Like I just want to root for those guys. And I feel like even when we go to Asia, though, I will say this: we get some of the biggest crowds following us in Asia. It's one of them. It's them events where they just love the LPGA. And so we get such great support out there. And so that's where I think it's so positive. Do I think there's an opportunity? And I've actually spoke to Craig about this. Do I think there's an opportunity for one of our majors to maybe be in Asia, Australia? I think there's certainly an opportunity there because we get so much support over there.
The co-opting of a platform or an event site with men, certainly you get it, kind of an off-season event, the Grant Thornton at the end of the year, but like a bona fide competition, whether it's separate competitions or a mixed team event, in your mind, should that be a priority?
I don't think so. I think a bigger priority is playing the same venues that have been on the road to on the men's schedule. Because then you can kind of look at Pebble Beach, for example. Everyone remembers that shot that Tiger hit second shot into 18 behind the tree. Well, look, Charlie was in a very similar position. And so I think it's fun to kind of see how we play those kind of shots. So I think it's more important going to or having the venues that the men have played such big events on our rotor. And we're starting to see that now. Got Riviera this year for the Women's US Open. And I think that there is an opportunity more so for like mixed events. Now the Olympics is now a mixed event. I think that's a fantastic shift. I think TGL, we've just announced that there was going to be a women's league. I feel like we should have been a little bit more of a mixed league. I think that would have been way more fun for fans. So there's certainly opportunity where we can be together, but I think playing the same venue is probably not, at the same time is probably not a priority. It's more having them venues on our rotor.
I was behind the 18th green when that shot landed on that Saturday. He was wearing, like 12 shades of beige. It was like a cream outfit, sweater, slacks. I will tell you, Mel, when that ball landed on the green, every media member looked at each other like, without saying anything, and it was like, he's back. He didn't have a great Sunday, but that was a moment. You're right. It's though people can connect moments from one, and you want to be able to provide the moments for the others. Last thing, I'm just curious about your view of Nelly. What do you think is her greatest asset? And does she have any hole? And I mean that relative, because if you look at her stats, first of all, she was second in strokes gained total for the season last year. She doesn't have some like glaring deficiency, but what is her greatest asset? And does she have anything that you would think she needs to shore up?
No, I think that her greatest asset is everything. She's a fantastic driver of the golf ball. That's a little bit underrated with Nelly. She's strokes gains off the tee is fantastic. Unbelievable ball striker, swings it like God. I think sometimes, her putting can potentially let her down a little bit, but when everything else is so good, you can kind of just see that as something that's a little bit weak when it's not really that weak. She had a great season this year. Her stroke average was lower than it was when she won 7 times in 2024. She's got a great team around her. Jason McDeed, her caddy, fantastic guy, great for her team, her physio, her agent. Everything is in the right place. I think now for Nelly, she doesn't need to prove anything to me, to you, to the media, to the LPGA. It's whether she wants to prove it to herself, how much she really wants to achieve. Does she want to put herself in the name of Kathy Whitworth, Mickey Wright, Annika Sorenstam? I think now for her, it would be crazy for her not to be on the LPGA Hall of Fame, and I think she's 9 points off or something like that. So I think it's just up to her now because she played fantastic golf this year. I almost feel like she played better golf this year. She didn't miss any cuts. She was very consistent. Like I said, her stroke average was down. She just didn't win. I think this year Nelly's going to win multiple times. She's just too good not to.
Mel, we're excited to get your thoughts throughout the year. Thank you for indulging us. Look forward to doing this real soon.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate it.
All right, there is Mel Reid, very important presence on Golf Channel for all the big events. We come back. Final thoughts right after this. Back in a couple minutes left here on this Tuesday. Tomorrow, Frank Nobilo from CBS as they begin their season with the addition of Johnson Wagner. Absolutely. By the way, I had several people on social media saying, what kind of sweater is that? You know it's Peter Millar. Please, it's the Callum Cable crew neck. There it is, petermillar.com. P. Reid, Patrick Reed. We were not here yesterday, so we didn't get to mention. He's now 29th in the official world golf rankings. That's a heck of a win. I mean, he went from 44th to 29th. P. Reid, there's something about his presence that makes things more interesting. And if you're going, I can't stand him, you just made my point. Him winning a golf tournament in a good field, very good field, is a very good win. And he's the kind of guy, especially when you think about having won the Masters, he could be a factor. Like I said, Nobilo tomorrow, dogs picks as well. It's Joe Montana outside, folks. It's 16 degrees. So we'll see you tomorrow on a Wednesday. Yeah, we're soft.